Hello, my name is Louis van Kessel, and I identify as a gay cis man.
Who was the first person you came out to and how did it go?
That's actually, well, I first came out when I was 14, so that was pretty young, I guess. And the first person I came out to was my mentor in high school. She was also my science teacher, and I trusted her a lot, and she gave a lot of positive energy. So I also felt very comfortable telling her or coming out of the closet to her. But everything afterwards happened so quickly. So I think a week after telling my mentor, I already also came out of the closet to my friends, to my parents, my brothers. It was like ripping the bandage off, I guess, like coming out immediately, or doing it as fast as possible so that that part of the process was over with.
Yeah, and how did they respond?
Everybody actually responded very positively. I have few negative experiences with coming out. A lot of the people were very supportive and very understanding. And well, since I was kind of flamboyant in high school, not a lot of people were actually very surprised by it either.
How did coming out make you feel?
It was a relief. I had been working through my own feelings for quite a while before that already, and I always thought that people would respond positively, but as long as you're never sure, there's always that little doubt in your mind, that voice at the back of your head that says, well, but what if people don't accept you for how you are? And that's a very scary voice, and that's a voice that also kept me from coming out even earlier, right? But as soon as I came out of the closet and I saw those positive responses and the love and acceptance, I felt a relief.
What has been the most supportive coming out experience for you?
I think it's an indirect experience, but after I came out to my parents, my parents told it to their parents, so my grandmothers, and I remember very vividly that my mom came up to me and she said she had that conversation with my grandmother, and my grandmother was an older lady, and my mom said that her response, and she's a woman from like the countryside. I didn't really know or imagine how my grandmothers would respond to it, but my mom told me that my grandma said that, oh, I'm very happy for him, and then I hope he's going to be really happy with whomever he finds. And that was something that I didn't necessarily expect from that generation. So I was very happy with that response.
What has been the hardest thing about coming out?
I think the hardest thing for me about coming out was really the struggle with that inner voice, that little grain of doubt that tells you, oh, maybe it's not good enough, maybe they won't accept you as you are. Because of course I have been teased a lot for being effeminate. So I've been called gay a lot already in primary school, also in high school, before I came out of the closet. So I had quite a few experiences with people using gay as a slur in a derogatory way, and that does give you the feeling or the idea that it's not good enough if you're gay, or you won't be good enough ever if you're gay. And even though I knew that my family, my friends would never have a problem with it. Hearing people use gay as like a derogatory term, as a slur, does instill this fear of coming out in a person. Even though you know that your friends and family will respond positively, you also have to reckon with yourself, and you have to be able to accept it from yourself. So you have to be able to tell yourself, I am good enough regardless of who I am.
When was the last time you came out to someone?
In a way, I think we're coming out all the time, because we're always telling something about ourselves to people that people might not have known, that you find sometimes difficult to tell. And this doesn't necessarily have to be about your sexuality or your gender identification. I think we come out all the time in various different ways. And I always, even though it might not be very surprising to hear that I am a gay man, I do, every time I introduce myself to students, talk about my gender identification and my sexual identification, because I think it's important for students to hear that conversation is possible in my classrooms. So I always introduce myself in the very first lecture of a lecture series. My name is Loy van Kessel. I identify as gay, and my pronouns are he and him, so that students struggling with their own sexuality and gender identification hear that my classroom is a safe space to talk about gender and sexuality.
Yeah. Have you ever had any negative experiences when you did that?
In my classroom, no. My students respond very positively to it, and definitely also when we do a round of introductions, students also pick up on that. So students also say, oh, I'm so-and-so, and these are my pronouns. And that creates an atmosphere of being able to talk about it together, of not trying to shun the discussion about gender and sexuality. We would ideally live in a world where we did not have to come out of the closet, a world in which nobody asks questions or looks down upon people who identify differently and who, frankly, do not necessarily care, because everybody should be able to identify themselves however they want to identify themselves without being looked down upon by other people. But before we get to that world, before we live in a world where we no longer need to come out of the closet, I think everybody should come out of the closet, whether you're gay, straight, asexual, bisexual, pansexual, whether you're cis man, cis woman, a trans man or a trans woman or non-binary. If we make the conversation easier for everybody, we'll also start to realize that it should not matter that much, that people should just be themselves regardless of their sexual or gender identification. I think this is a large part of the conversation. Coming out is not only about the person who is coming out of the closet, it's also about a society that still thinks of LGBTQIA plus persons as not being the norm, as being other than the rest. And as long as this big contingency of people is treated as other, as different, then yes, we will always need LGBTQIA plus activism, and non-LGBTQIA plus identified people need to work harder to make society more accepting.
Do you have any advice for LGBTQI plus people who are struggling with coming out?
That is a very difficult question. I would say take your time, because you should tell the story about your gender or sexuality when you're ready for it, and not because others want you to tell that story. So take the time to get comfortable with yourself and with your own gender identity and your own sexual identity. And what helped me was the internet. When I was first figuring out how I identified and how I felt, I was very happy that there were websites and fora that I could read and that on which I could meet people that shared the same struggles and shared the same identification. And so it's really good to look for help and to learn about yourself via channels that might not be your immediate friends or family.
Want to hear more coming out stories? Please visit leiderpride.nl.